Hello, thank you for joining us today for this webinar where we will discuss LYFT, the Literacy Interventions Foundational Toolkit. My name is Sarah Stolman. I am a K-3 Literacy PD Specialist with the Louisiana Department of Education, and I'm excited to share this new resource with you all today. Now, before we talk about the resource, it's important to set the context. When we look at beginning of the year screener data for third grade students in Louisiana, only about 53.2% of students are reading at or above benchmark on these literacy screeners. Why this is important is that it shows that almost half of the students in Louisiana need additional support with reading foundations if they are going to be able to read with sufficient fluency to support reading comprehension. The picture doesn't get any rosier as we move through third grade. When we look at end of the year third grade LEAP data, we see that only about 38% of students are achieving mastery and advanced on ELA end of year assessments. So it's important for us to understand what we can do to support these students to ensure that they're ready to be successful on these assessments and in the content that we're teaching every single day. So you might ask, what can we do? Well, there are two things that we can do. The first thing is that we must identify any gaps in foundational skills and provide students with explicit instruction focused specifically on those gaps. That is the purpose of the LYFT tool, which we're going to talk about today. We must also continue to provide ongoing systematic and explicit instruction in foundational skills, particularly focusing on advanced spelling patterns, morphology, and grammar, skills that are not typically taught in grades K through 2. This is the focus of a different resource that we are providing, the 3-5 Foundations program. We have a webinar on our literacy library that will explain this resource as well. But today we're going to talk about the LYFT tool. Now, it's also important to recognize that for students entering third grade in the 2022-2023 school year, it's possible that there may be even greater gaps in foundational skills knowledge than ever before. We know that many of these students were students who were in kindergarten during that COVID year where they might have lost a quarter of their school year. They had other years where maybe they were out quite a bit for quarantining. And so we also know that there were hurricanes during the 2021-2022 school year and before also that may have limited which foundational skills were taught. So in order to support students in whatever gaps they might have in foundational skills, it's essential for teachers to be able to have a clear sense for what those gaps are and what they can do to support their students. The LYFT tool is designed to help teachers pinpoint specific gaps in foundational skills for upper elementary students and possibly even beyond. If you have middle school or high school students who are struggling with reading foundations, this resource can be helpful for them as well. Now, we would be remiss if we did not share Scarborough's reading rope and discuss how this tool fits in with this rope. So when we think about skilled reading, we know that skilled reading is the process of strong language comprehension and strong word recognition. We know that as students, go through the different curricula that they use for ELA, we're doing a very good job of providing resources in terms of building knowledge, helping them think through things like vocabulary or language structures. But we also know that when we think of the word recognition strands, we also think that this is the work of the K2 teacher. So most of the time, our whole group systematic explicit instruction and reading foundational skills is confined to the work of the K through 2 teacher. But as we mentioned earlier, nearly half of our students need ongoing support in this area. This is where the LYFT tool comes in. The LYFT tool is going to focus on these word recognition strands to ensure that we're building students' reading fluency so that they're able to be successful with the content, the ELA content that they're working on in their upper grades. We will determine where students' gaps are. Are they in phonological or phonemic awareness or decoding? What is preventing them from truly being able to recognize words by sight and read fluently and automatically? That is the purpose of the LYFT tool. Now, when we think about the LYFT tool, the idea is that the LYFT tool is not something that would be given to every student. We begin by thinking about the students that are most in need, and these are the students who have been flagged by that beginning of the year screener as students who are not reading at or above benchmark. So any student who is below benchmark based on that beginning of the year screener, any student who is not mastery or advanced on the LEAP assessment, or any student who might have other struggles that are unexplained. That is where you can use your teacher discretion. But this tool is really designed to support students who have struggles with reading foundations. The first thing that you do with the LYFT tool is that you'll assess students' reading fluency. And you're going to compare their reading fluency, their words correct per minute, to national norms. For students who are reading below the 50th percentile for reading fluency for their grade level, you would administer a code knowledge diagnostic. So again, we begin by administering a fluency assessment to any student who is below benchmark on the screener, who is not achieving mastery or advanced on the LEAP, or who you might just have concerns about. Once we administer that, we use the resources to determine if that student is reading below the 50th percentile for their grade level. And if they are, then we administer a code knowledge diagnostic. Now, an important caveat here is that words correct per minute, or fluency rate, as we often refer to it, is only relevant for accurate readers, those who are able to read a passage with at least 95% accuracy. If you have a student whose words correct per minute does exceed the norm for the 50th percentile, but their accuracy rate is low, you also want to administer the code knowledge diagnostic, because if inaccurate reading is going to prevent fluent reading over the long term. Now, the code knowledge diagnostic assists teachers in identifying which gaps in code knowledge may be preventing students from reading with sufficient fluency to support comprehension. Do they struggle to decode CBC words, CBCE words, words with R-controlled vowels or diphthongs? This code knowledge diagnostic is going to pinpoint precisely which spellings are posing problems for the students, and that will alert the teacher to where she should provide that targeted support. Now, for students with significant gaps in code knowledge, maybe across the board gaps in code knowledge, or students who are very slow decoders, a phonemic or phonological awareness screener is included in the LYFT diagnostic and can be administered. You would only administer the phonemic or phonological awareness screener to those students who really cannot be successful in the code knowledge diagnostic in any way. So, just to kind of reiterate, you look at your beginning of the year screener data, your LEAP data, data that you're collecting every day as a teacher, and any student who has a concern on any of those measures would be administered the reading fluency assessment. Students who read below the 50th percentile for reading fluency at 95% accuracy would then go to the code knowledge diagnostic. If a student is an inaccurate reader, reading below 95% accuracy, you would also administer the code knowledge diagnostic to them. Students who are not successful with the code knowledge diagnostic will be pushed down to the phonemic and phonological awareness screener. You go as far as you need to. Not every student is going to need all parts of this assessment. So keep that in mind as you're administering this assessment. In addition to providing information on which skills need support, this tool also provides direct access to short lessons that teachers can use to support those specific skills. So as I mentioned earlier, we know that foundational skills have often been seen as the work of the K-2 teacher. So our upper elementary, middle, and high school teachers might not feel prepared to provide lessons in these areas. That's why we provided these lessons. These lessons are designed to be administered very quickly, within 5 minutes. They also provide a description of how this work of this lesson supports students reading to grow. teachers' understanding of the foundational skills instruction. So the idea is that this will also grow teachers' understanding as well as students' foundational skills. In order to complete this assessment, you will need a copy of the student recording document, which is located on the Louisiana Literacy website in the LYFT library. And you will also need one copy of the teacher administration document. You will need a copy of the student recording document for each student for whom you are administering the assessment. Now you will see in the student recording packet, at the very beginning, we have a student profile at a glance. This is a place where you're recording all of the data that you collect as you administer the assessment. You'll determine which fluency passage you read. You'll calculate words correct per minute. And for those of you who might not be comfortable calculating words correct per minute or just want an easy way to do that, we do have a words correct per minute calculator. You'll be prompted to make a copy. And then you can put in the total number of words read. Let's say it's 180, total number of errors, how long you let them read in seconds. So let's say 180 seconds. And it will calculate the words correct per minute. So you can see for this student, they read 58 words correct per minute at 97% accuracy. That calculator is there for you to use as often as needed. We have a link to a prosody rubric. We also have a link to the fluency norms. So this is where you're going to get the information that you need to calculate whether or not a student is reading at the 50th percentile or not. So if you're a third grade teacher and you're administering this in the fall, you'll see that students reading at 83 words correct per minute put them right at the 50th percentile. Any student reading below that in third grade would need the code knowledge diagnostic. Any student with less than 95% accuracy would also need the code knowledge diagnostic. These norms go all the way up to about 6th grade. And if you are beyond that, please feel free to reach out to us for guidance on what you can do to meet the needs of 8th grade or 10th grade or 12th grade students, whatever the case may be. We do have a rubric here for measuring a student's prosody, which is their reading expression. And then you'll find a place for you to input their scores for all of the different components of the assessment. Linked within that is a link to our LYFT library. And our LYFT library is going to provide you with many different resources to support students in the particular skills that they may need. Now you can download all phonics activities, or you can identify specifically which activity you would like support with. If you click on that, it will prompt you to download a zip document. You can open, and you can see that we have different activities for you to do, decoding CVC words in isolation, in stories, or in sentences. You can feel free to download or utilize any of these resources at your discretion. We also see down here is where we have our tools located for you to print. You'll record all your scores here. Here are some checklists to help you kind of determine like some common mistakes that students might make when reading or when reading these spelling patterns. And it will link you to some activities that you can use if the student is struggling in that particular area. For those students who need to be administered the phonemic awareness inventory, this is a place where you can administer those sounds. As I mentioned, the first step is to administer that fluency assessment. Now we have provided 2 fluency passages. For most students, this first fluency passage is all they're going to need. You're going to determine whether or not they are a fluent reader based on this fluency passage quest for the best. It doesn't matter if they're in 3rd grade or 6th grade, this is a great place to start. We've also provided a more advanced fluency passage for you to use at your discretion. If you have a student who reads this passage in your class and they're above the 50th percentile, but they're still struggling with some of the content and you're like, I just want to present them with a slightly more complex passage, feel free to use this second passage, the French Quarter, but this is not a must do in order to complete this diagnostic. This is just an extra passage for you. As you listen to the student read, you will note any errors, insertions, omissions, and then you will calculate their total words read correctly, the time, and then the number of errors. And you can go back to the at-a-glance sheet to calculate their words correct per minute and accuracy. For students who are not successful with the fluency passage, you move on to the code knowledge inventory. What you'll do is you'll mark which words they are not able to read. You can note how they read it. So for example, if they read hat as hate, you can just write hate right next to that so that you can see whether or not there is some issue with them discriminating between CVC and long vowel words. Those types of things can be great for your analysis. We go through a whole host of different spelling patterns that might be pose problems for students. Then we give students an opportunity to read words in the context of sentences. And then we give them opportunity to practice encoding words, So what they'll do is they will write the sentence as you read it aloud to them. They will write the sentence as you read it aloud to them. Now, the sentence that they will need to write is included in the teacher administration document. They would record their sentence here, and you are recording all of their answers above. For those students who need the phonemic and phonological awareness inventory, it is provided here, along with instructions. T is teacher, and after that, you say exactly those words as you administer this assessment. This is the student recording packet. As I mentioned, you will also need a copy of the teacher administration document. This is just one copy you'll need of this for yourself. This has a flow chart. It gives you an overview of this assessment, a description of all of the things that you'll need to do, an explanation of all of the things that I'm talking about today, a passage for the students to read from. You'll notice that it doesn't have the line numbers along the side. This is just a simple passage for them to read, so they can read from this passage. Copy of the more advanced fluency passage if you need it. A description of the code knowledge inventory, here are the words, the sentence reading, the encoding. These are those sentences that you will call out to them so that they can write, so you can see if they're able to match sound to spelling while they're writing. And then the phonemic and phonological awareness inventory. Now, we've walked you through the fluency assessment, the code knowledge diagnostic, the phonemic and phonological awareness screener, and the student profile sheet. We've also shown you the lessons in our LYFT lesson library. And these are all of the different things that we can offer. Now, hopefully after you complete this webinar, you can think through how you can see this resource helping students in upper elementary and answer whatever questions you might have, or we can answer any questions that you might have. You can feel free to email those to me, Sarah Stolman at sarah.stolman@la.gov. I'm happy to answer those for you at any time. If there's anything else we can do to support you as you support your students, we're happy to do that. Thank you for joining us today, and happy lifting.